So I've been in law enforcement it's going to be 27 years this January, or December. So 27 years. Initially because I wanted a job that I felt I wouldn't get bored at, and it would be something different every day. Part of it was the old cliche of feeling like I could really make a difference in an occupation that would have contact with people on an almost daily basis. It certainly can be difficult because there are many things that you see in law enforcement that most people won't see in a lifetime. The one aspect of law enforcement that nobody really acknowledges is that regardless of what people think of police, the police are always there. But I've gone to calls where people have had problems with their plumbing. I've had calls where people are upset with their neighbor for cutting grass the wrong way. And then I've had really serious calls like suicides, homicides, traffic fatalities. Is that you really have to find purpose behind what you're doing and believe that what you're doing in a broader picture makes a difference in order to get through a lot of that. So I worked with a lot of officers that didn't feel that way. And so it really weighed down on them pretty heavy because, you're constantly going to incidents that are crisis events, and you're not adequately prepared to deal with it mentally. They don't teach you that in the academy, or at least they didn't when I was there. It can become very stressful and traumatic. So since I started in 1995, I know of at least 7 officers that I either knew or worked with that have committed suicide. I've had one incident that affected me for a long time and still does, was a single mother who had gotten home from working at a bar, and unknown to her, she had been stalked by a sexual predator. And so one night he broke into her house when she was gone. When she came home, he attacked her, and his intent was to kill her after he raped her. And that was an ordeal that lasted for her for at least 5 to 6 hours. It was traumatizing in the sense that the call initially came to 911 by a neighbor because she was able to get out of the house, and she ran next door. She was naked and had been beaten pretty badly. And the neighbors who were elderly didn't know what to do, so they called 911. I found her. I responded by myself. Then I found her in the kitchen, passed out. I thought she had been shot because he had beaten her so bad in her face you couldn't recognize her, and her front teeth were knocked out. And she had all kinds of marks on her from where he tortured her, like with cigarettes and stuff. And so it was probably the most traumatic I've ever dealt with. First off, because when I was there, I had to wait for backup to come, and I worked for a sheriff's department, so my backup wasn't nearby. And so, of course, I'm with this unconscious victim, and I haven't cleared the house yet, so at any moment I was expecting the perpetrator to jump out. And then I had to try to keep her going because I was afraid she was in the throes of dying. So I turned her on her side so she could breathe. And then finally I was able to get an officer was there, and we were able to get the ambulance and everything else. But that bothered me for quite a while, because when we then cleared the house, we went into her room, and she had fought the perpetrator all through the night. To put in perspective, she had bloody handprints all over the bedroom where she was trying to open the window. he would walk out and she would try to keep the door closed. And that scene to this day still bothers me a lot, because it was just, when you entered the bedroom, you just felt pure evil and pure brutality. But I think the cumulative buildup of all that trauma leads police officers to drink, leads police officers to make bad decisions. And I think it also makes police officers when you're constantly emotionally battered by things you see, you tend to build a wall around yourself because you don't want to continue to have it. You become desensitized. And unfortunately, I think some of that desensitization also leads cops to be kind of like not very personable with the public, or very understanding maybe, or at least they come across as not caring. Luckily, I have a beautiful family and a beautiful wife who have helped me, and a very strong belief in God and for what the purpose is for what I do. So that's helped. And I don't think a lot of police officers see meaning in what they do. Here's the kicker to it. The paradox is that most cops don't ask for help, because the fear is if they go see a psychiatrist or psychologist or therapist, it gets reported back to the department. And one of the many unrealistic expectations of police officers is that we expect you to be physically and mentally healthy at all times because of the awesome responsibility you carry. So in other words, I've also been part of departments where if you went to see a therapist, the first question many administrators have is, are you capable of doing the job then? That you have to seek out mental health therapy, because they don't want some rogue police officer out there now armed with a gun who's going to suddenly go off the deep end and start shooting people. Officers don't trust that going to a therapist or seeking mental health is going to protect their jobs, and yet that's usually what they need. They need to have that. So unfortunately, the culture of law enforcement has to change. It's starting to, but it has a long way to go. And what I mean is that we need to create a culture where police officers, society can't put unrealistic expectations on police. We cannot solve everything. And, they used to say that the police are the finest. So that's the standard they held you to. So if a police officer had a bad day, for instance, and was grumpy towards somebody or didn't answer the way that the public feels they should, well, then they're a bad cop. There is no in between. So I think it's changing, but it's going to take a lot more.